What's up, y'all? Jonathan Ramirez here, Thriving Earth Farm, Jolton, Tennessee. Just wanted to share like a super simple logging setup for a tractor. It can work with almost any tractor that has a 3-point hitch in the back. Yeah, it's not the most optimal setup, but it could be something good for you. So here it is. So yeah, it's basically just one of those old grater blades turned around, and a little wooden box built onto it. As you can see, I bought this grater blade for like $60. It was super cheap. It was really old. It's not in the best condition, but it's just always worked fine for me. Obviously it's not like a skidding winch, so there's no winch on there. Maybe someone could figure out how to put one on there. And I've used, big Wallenstein and Norse skidding winches before. And those are great to have, especially if you're working in terrain where you can't get the tractor up to the logs, where it's too tight to get in there. But if you don't have the money to spend on, a few $1,000s on that, and you're doing something where you can actually get to the logs. I've pulled some huge logs with this setup right here. I've hauled must have been like 32-inch by 20-foot long log with this setup on flat ground. Obviously going up hills or whatnot, it might not be as easy. But I've pulled a bunch of 18-foot by like 20-inch diameter, probably five that size cedar logs in one run with this. The biggest challenge with using this system, not having a cable, is getting more than one log onto at a time. So if you're hauling one log at a time, this is great. Even doing two at a time, you could hook one up, drive right up to the next one, roll that one in, and then hook that one up. As long as you can drive up next to the logs and roll them in, then you can do as many as you can, but you can't cable them in like normal cable skidder would. So that's the disadvantage of this. So in the box, I have extra fuel and bar oil. Sometimes I also carry like larger amounts of that in this thing. This setup here I'm usually wearing. It's got an axe on it, first aid kit. Actually, I quit using my first aid kit as a first aid kit, and I actually use this right here as a plumb bob to check the lean on a tree. But of course you have your chainsaw wrench, your file, some wedges, logging tape. That I generally just carry on me all the time. It also has an emergency whistle, so if anything happens and you're stuck, pinned, or something like that, you can whistle. So I'm usually wearing that, and then this is usually what's in here. Log cant, chainsaw, obviously, iPro, ear pro, sometimes it's different stuff, and then all your chains. So there's a bunch of different chains you can use. This is my favorite sort of setup to use, and I usually carry a hammer for this too. Man, I forget what these are called. I think they're called grab hooks. You basically hammer it into a log, you hook onto it, this hooks onto a chain, and then the chain, basically once you have the log hooked up, you take the chain and you simply just hook it right in there and it grabs it. And I've pulled some really big stuff with this, and this metal has never bent. It's pretty thick metal. If you wanted to, you could reinforce this back with little triangular metal pieces and weld them in. And if you found that you're hauling lots of logs at once, you can do multiple runs of those. I have two, and that's been pretty adequate. Sometimes I'll hook, a bunch of logs together and just, put them in one thing there. And then the 3-point hitch can raise and lower this. So yeah, super simple setup. The grater blade, obviously, if you need to push a log, and you don't have a loader, you can push it with that. If you need to push through brush, you can push with that. If you want to fix a road, you can turn it around and fix the road. Just flip it 360. Yeah, so super simple setup. One thing I forgot to mention is if you are using this grader blade for actual grading and you're going to end up flipping it around, the box is actually useful for that too. You just flip the blade around, and if you have this box, you can fill it with weight. Like I filled it with big rocks in there. You know, one of the main downsides of using a grader blade on a tractor to actually grade a road is that the 3-point hitch doesn't have downward hydraulic pressure that you can put on it. I think there's stuff that you could buy to do that. But even with like a top and tilt, you know, you're not really gonna have a lot of downward pressure, you know, to push the blade down into the ground. And the reason that's important is because if you're grading with a grader blade, a lot of times what'll end up happening is the grader blade will just like skip around on the surface, especially if it needs a hard packed area. You know, and there's a time and a place for using rippers and whatnot. But if you put weight in this box and you're using it as a grader, it definitely helps out a whole bunch. I've done even crazy things where I've put a whole bunch of rocks in there and then put, you know, logs and stuff all over the grader blade to give it even more weight, to get even more bite. But yeah, so just wanted to add that. Nowadays I use a 6-way dozer blade. That's what that is over there, and a skid steer for, you know, heavy grading work, or if it's even heavier, just renting a bulldozer. But yeah, for the farm, for cheap, you know, $60 find, grader blade can do a lot.